Hey, what's up? It's Christian, and this is Bonefish.
Oh, hey, I'm Justin. Welcome back.
It's the podcast about psychedelic music and Animal Collective.
Yeah, dude.
Spirit They've Gone, the reissue is here. It's beautiful. It sounds so good. So thick, you know? I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sounds great. Yeah, we're going to talk about Spirit They've Gone, Spirit They've Vanished, and super lucky to get to talk to Dave Portner, a.k.a. Avey Tare, who's a founding member of Animal Collective.
Wow. The man.
Yeah.
The genius.
Really cool that he was down to talk to a startup podcast. And
Just a fan of the little guy.
Yeah. +1 for the little guys.
Yeah. Holy cow. It was awesome. He was super nice. We talked about early New York days, what his life was like at the time. Some cool methods of consuming hash are included. And
he started talking about doing knife hits, and like a cop, I asked him what a knife hit was.
Got to listen to find out.
Yeah, you should listen, and then listen to the reissue while you're doing knife hits.
But towards the end of the interview, some cool news regarding future Animal Collective musical releases. And then, after the interview, we got to see him play, which I feel like we could have done a whole other interview after that. Yeah, I could have talked to him for hours, obviously, but we had about one. And, here's the interview. Enjoy. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome back to your one-time home of LA. And it's cool that we're talking to you here at Stone's Throw, legendary LA record label, home to so many great artists, including Madlib, a.k.a. Lord Quaz, also.
Big influence.
Big
inspiration
on here.
Yeah. Never been here before, as much as I liked all the stuff that been put out.
Well, thanks, Colin and and folks at Stone's Throw for letting us use the space. And that first Quasimodo record, The Unseen, it came out right around the time that Spirit came out.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk about that time and that album? And
I was living at an apartment in Soho, actually, at that time, when I guess you could still magically get afford an apartment. I was just out of college, or I dropped out of college. I was spending my last semester of college there. Just decided that dorm living was comparable to that at the time, so just found a roommate, and we just lived in a studio apartment together, just kind of, shared the same room and had a bathroom. And I got a job at Other Music, the record store that was in Manhattan at the time, and
R.I.P.
No longer is. I shopped there and gotten a lot of records there, so it was kind of a big deal for me to get this kind of cool record store job. And all this stuff just started, awesome music just started coming out at that time. And I had spent I guess the last semester of college kind of going back and forth from New York to my parents' house in Maryland, because we had recorded, we'd done all the basic tracking for Spirit the summer before that. That was like 98, I guess, or 99, summer of 99, I guess, going into, the school year, which was, the end of the year there. And I had the job at Other, and I guess Quasimodo came out at 2000, right? It all kind of blends together, but I just remember discovering so much music when I was at that apartment, and just spending so much time alone, smoking a lot of weed, smoking a lot of hash. For some reason, There was a lot of hash going around. We'd do knife hits on the stove. Like,
wait, what's a knife hit? Sorry.
You cook up two knives. You hold a piece of hash in between two knives and get the flame going on a because you need to get hash pretty hot to smoke it. And you kind of put the hash in between the two knives. I mean, you can do it a number of ways. It's just not knife hits. You do it with knives. You light up the hash, and then you just kind of bring it up to your mouth. And we'd often get burned. You put the knives a little.
Definitely a badass way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting time in getting into New York. Like it was my third year there. I'd gone there for school, and it was just pre like Williamsburg kind of boom too. Nobody was really. I mean, there were people that lived over there for sure. It was just starting to get going. I just would go back and forth mixing Spirit. Like spent a lot of time on the Chinatown bus, and that's kind of why I named. There's an EP that I put out with the reissue that just came out, and that's kind of why I named those tracks like the Bus Travel in New York, just because that was my method of like trying to get it down.
There's some great jams on that. The reissue looks awesome, like beautiful packaging.
Congrats. What your sister did, right? Are you and your sister collabed?
Yeah, a little bit of the artwork was taken from the old version, kind of the stuff I did on the inside. And I think just based on those ideas of what I was going for in there, I just kind of like talked to my sister who does a lot of artwork for Animal Collective and Avey Tare stuff. And over the years, just talked to her about doing something, a little bit more kind of like Avey Tare, Panda Bear focused,
Yeah, and I know you guys kind of retroactively called it an Animal Collective album, and does it feel to you like that? Because I know you guys have been making music together since you were pretty young, maybe before this, and there's always been kind of like a river of creativity. Does it feel like an Anco kind of release to you? I know I think the next year is when you guys all maybe kind of got together and made a lot of live music.
I mean, it was definitely made a little bit. It was made more in the era of kind of us still kind of doing our own thing, because that was kind of just prior to Noah Brian was going to school in New York at the same time too, and then Brian eventually moved into that apartment with me just for a summer that I was in. But Noah and Josh both lived in Boston and were going to school there. So we kind of were still making music in an individualistic kind of way, like doing our own thing, solo kind of way. Noah had put together a compilation of Panda Bear songs. That was like the first thing that was self-released on a Soccer Star label. Yeah. And Spirit for me was kind of like, the way I envisioned it was like my personal kind of statement. Like I had up until then, just done a lot of 4-track recordings and was starting to practice a lot and work a lot on my 8-track that I had, my Tascam 48 reel to reel. And so I just had in mind that I wanted to make an, all encompassing, like an album of just new sounding stuff, like take my songwriting to a new level. So it was sort of like my record. I mean, even down to like a lot of like the drum beats and stuff like that, I came up with like the rhythms as I was writing the songs are kind of like go hand in hand with that. And I would just sort of like beatbox the rhythm to Noah and be like, oh, like, and then he would do it. And like, nice. I knew he could do it because, I thought he was such an incredible drummer. And, and then he would just take that kind of stuff from there and go. So, in my head at the time, it was sort of, an Avey Tare record, but I think everything that was also the time that we started coming up with the whole Animal Collective philosophy and kind of like what we wanted to be. And I think it was based on more at first, like wanting to have a label, like our own label that was just Animal, which was the label that we put Spirit out on. So it was just sort of like, we wanted to create this label that would showcase all of our stuff and different combinations of what we were doing. And and we kind of just came up with the idea at that time that whoever was on the record, since we all kind of started coming up with our own individual names at that time too. I don't know if Brian and Josh, how soon around then they came up with their names. Definitely, of course, for Brian, like happened around Dance Manatee. But yeah, it just seemed to make sense to call it Avey Tare and Panda Bear since we were both playing on the record. And I mean, Noah is a very crucial part to the record. It wouldn't be anything else without his drumming. And I thought it was so idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you could look at it both ways.
I feel like I read that Noah was trying to like mimic maybe some, or you too, some like of Timberland's beats a little bit. Is that
totally? I mean, that was around that time that all those Timbaland was doing such cool production with Leah and Missy Elliott and all that stuff, and that stuff is really inspiring to us as well. And I think just also a lot of electronic music, Aphex Twin, that we really liked a lot, and drum and bass and Square Pusher, just very kind of jittery, kind of broken up beats. I think I was trying to like emulate too a little bit, but do it more like organically with like a drummer.
That's super interesting because like it does. I feel like in retrospect, Spirit does have such like a sort of like twin energy, like a dual. Like you have the artwork with like the two fairies and.
I mean, with the artwork too, that's what I wanted to go for. The fact that it was both of us, like with the two kind of like, angel fairy kind of things, like,
right.
If that was like in reference to like two people being on the record for sure.
For his drumming, there's a lot of like brushes. It's like such a unique, I was wondering if that was like did that come from just like sort of necessity, like DIY recording?
No, that's how I wanted. I wanted it to sound like that. I really liked.
That was deliberate.
Ocean Rain by Echo and the Bunnymen, and I feel like there's a lot of brush work on that record. I really like the drumming and just the whole rhythm section of Echo and the Bunnymen has always been really inspiring for me. So it was kind of that, and Forever Changes. I feel like it's come up that we really liked that record, and I feel like that has a very light. I had read, I think at somewhere that they recorded that record, like the initial tracking was all done in like a small room, kind of like I don't know if it was like a bedroom or just like a living room together or something like that. And I felt like to me it had that, I wanted it to have that vibe. Because we just recorded it in the bedroom together, like me sitting on a chair and him in a drum set like right there.
Is that a Pistol Ring studio? I saw on the credits.
Yeah, I mean that was just that was just my bedroom studio for wherever wherever I took my 8-track, basically my Tascam 48, which is what I recorded it on.
Nice. And how well did you know Noah? Because I know Christian found a quote.
Right, yeah.
Do you want to read it?
A quote it was a recent Bandcamp thing where some of the other guys in the band kind of go through, talk about each of their records, but there's a quote from Noah that said, Spirit was the first time I really felt like I was working on music. Up until then, it was casual and loose. They were Dave's songs, we didn't know each other that well, and there wasn't a whole lot of talking. He'd play me a song, say what he was looking for, then we'd go for it.
I thought like you guys had already kind of known. I thought you guys had known each other already for a while. I was kind of surprised.
I mean, we were. I mean, the thing about both of us back then, especially, is we were both very shy, very quiet and reserved, and separately, we both came to be friends because of Josh. Really, Josh introduced Brian and I to Noah, and I think it was really like at first Josh started playing music with Brian and I in high school in another band that we had. But then, I forget like what the actual circumstance was. I think we played like a show that we set up at our high school, and Josh and Noah wanted somebody to help them play some of their songs. So that's when I first met Noah. I played keyboards, I think.
Is that Automine?
With them. Yeah, Automine was the other band that we had. Nice. And then they had a band called the Cartels that they called themselves that, it was hard to tell if it was Noah or Josh's songs. It was kind of just like all blended together. But I always saw Noah back then as he, as I got to know him more, like over a short span of time, like his songwriting and all that sort of electronic stuff started coming out. But like kind of when we first started getting to know each other, he was a drummer to me, and like a really great drummer. So I would just go over to Josh's house, and Josh kind of, they graduated. They were a year ahead of me in high school, and they decided not to go to college after high school ended and just take a year off to figure out what they wanted to do. And Josh made this soundproof room in his mom's house. And I would just go over there, so many nights, almost like every night, and we would just jam together and just like Noah said in that quote, it wasn't like we were really trying to work on anything. We were just kind of like, it was almost like we would write a song every night or in a different style and just figure out how you could do different things.
They say a lot of artists it's like for their first record, it's kind of their life's work up to then, and then you kind of get on a schedule and you have to write songs for each album. Were you kind of working on these songs like kind of your whole life, or did they come like pretty much like in the few years
The
before?
Spirit songs?
Yeah, the Spirit songs.
I'd say they came like the few years before. There were Penny Dreadfuls, which was originally called Penny Painting, was an Automine song from our earlier band. So I wrote that song when I was like 17 years old. It was way more guitar-y and kind of like Modest Mousey a little bit, like I really liked the first Modest Mouse album when it came out, and that's the kind of stuff that we all were kind of listening to a little bit amongst other things. But yeah, like I would go to these sessions and Noah and I would just play music together. We wouldn't really like do much else, like go hang out. Or we did, but yeah, we were both very reserved people. So when we decided to do Spirit, he would just come over. We'd have like dinner with my family, and it would just be very quiet, amongst us. And I mean, we talked and joked around a lot, but we were just. It took us, a few years to really like get comfortable with each other.
Spoke through the music.
Yeah, it was really mostly like a musical thing. And yeah, I had I worked at a summer camp in between college, like one year, and I think that also might have been the year that we started recording. But that was just a very fruitful year for me of like writing a lot of those songs. I think like '98, was probably when I wrote most of the stuff, just trying to figure out some new form of long form writing that I wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so cool to revisit this album. I'm curious when it came up that you guys would reissue this. The credits say it's mixed by you. Did you do what was your role in like the remastering or the?
Yeah, I mean, it was just remastered from the original master, basically. Right. So yeah, like all the mixing and everything, none of that had changed. For a minute, we thought about maybe trying to remix it,
getting into the stems and stuff.
Yeah, just because there are things that, looking back now, I might be like, oh, why did I do that? Or like, that's interesting, you know what I mean? Not that we would have changed that much. I think for a second we thought, oh, we could just get this like, perfect version or something. But then both Josh and I wanted Josh to do it, but then it was just sort of like the record is what it is. You know what I mean? It would be very hard to just like recreate in a sense.
Almost be
like,
a different thing.
Yeah, it would be something different. So I think I was happy just to stick with the way it was.
When it came time to like reissue it, and you were re-encountering this album, re-encountering these songs, what was that like? Or did it feel even like re-encountering them? Like, I mean, it's a record that's 2 decades old plus. But on the other hand, there's songs that you've written that have been in AC's, catalog. Was it like I don't know, when you had to listen to all the songs?
It was definitely interesting, going back, like. Yeah. There's still a very familiar feeling that a lot of that stuff invokes in me and takes me back like very easily to certain rooms and growing up, and certain samples I used even like predate that. There's like a sample of my sister talking to me on it and says like, David, you messed the whole thing up, and that's from like when we were kids, and that just it just like takes me back to. But on the other side, it's like those songs they never really went anywhere for me, you know what I mean? It was all so ingrained in me. It wasn't like with that one in particular, it wasn't like I forgot much about it. You know what I mean? It was all like pretty much.
You're like, this is all. Yeah. Is there like a track from the record that you think back on that's like, I don't know, the Spirit track for you, or one that you have exciting memories making? Or
really? I mean, it was all just pretty, eye-opening and just like, wow, this is happening and this sounds good. And I know Alvin Rowe, to me, like. For me, just in terms of writing it, was sort of like a feat, you know what I mean? And just like taking things to the next level for me in terms of like what I wanted to do with songwriting. It was kind of exactly everything I had like thought of I wanted to get from music up until that time, and just like a mixture of classical music and like psychedelic folk music and electronic noise kind of stuff, just all coming together, Yeah,
I was going to ask you about that, because there's a cool like juxtaposition of the like elegant piano and kind of harsh noise frequencies. Like, were you chasing that sound? Like, did you hear that in your head, or were you just kind of making sounds with what you had? Or
I was chasing that sound for sure. I mean, I was using what I had, but that was like the beauty of making music to me at that time. It was like I had spent enough time trying to copy other people, you know, and trying to figure out how other people did certain things, and was just so inspired by like lo-fi DIY recording and 4-track recording from like the indie rock era of like the late 80s, like 90s, you know what I mean? But also simultaneously just always inspired by, you know, like the Beatles and just, you know, how they did things and how, you know, more hi-fi stuff. I wanted it all bleed together, but I wanted to do my own thing. And, you know, I thought I could do that just by using what I had around and just figuring out ways of, I just like started working a lot with like feedback loops basically, and just like running gear into itself, you know, into a mixer and then back into itself. And I had the sequential circuits. We always call it like a very classic piece of gear for us, like a sequential circuits delay unit that I used to get a lot of those like sounds out of it. And yeah, it worked pretty well.
Yeah. It's cool. Like, I don't know, I think maybe for maybe newer fans of you who maybe might have this idea of Animal Collective as like a very electronic band, but really you guys have always like written your songs sort of pre-studio, you know, out of the computer with like electronics and gear, but it's really like a, you know, an analog enterprise, I guess, or it's something that a lot of the songs happen in the room.
It started very analog for me, especially, you know, I feel like the other guys got quickly into computer recording and that kind of thing, and I didn't necessarily, just because I had really started on this 8-track and kind of really stuck with it, and I didn't really keep recording stuff that I would release so much. Maybe, I mean, we kind of started a lot up until then, like Dance Manatee, Sung Tongues, we all kind of started on that 8-track, you know, and I was content just to use that. We were very influenced by electronic music, and Noah especially, like, brought techno into my life, and a lot of like electronic groups that I had never, you know, like the Orb, like, you know, those were like very early influences, but like Noah kind of brought that to the table, you know. I was definitely more on like the rock side of things. I mean, I did, like, in terms of electronic music, I like more like noise kind of stuff, or like Finesse was like a really big influence for me around the time of Spirit. Like, he did that single that was like Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, and Paint It Black. And when I was in college and I heard that.
Endless Summer? Or?
No, it was before Endless Summer, which I loved a lot too. But I think Endless Summer came out like post Spirit. I think it was really that single, and like the
right on.
I forget what the label is called now that all that stuff was coming out on. But yeah, really changed my way of thinking in terms of sound, just being able to use sonics and electronics.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing about you guys is like what you took from electronic music and you kind of applied that to a lot of organic sounds, you know, kind of the repetition, you know, like you guys are really good at that. And
it's also cool too how like you're taking from electronic music and those kind of things. It also, like, through your music, it gives back to it. Like, I remember when the reissue was announced, I was like looking on Instagram, and one Tricks Point Never, he just commented like, you know, this was an amazing record that like changed my life forever when I heard it. And that was cool seeing that cross.
Nice, yeah,
influence.
Is this kind of, is this the beginning of like maybe an archival period for you guys? Or is there anything more in the vaults?
I mean, we have tons of stuff in the vaults, but definitely, I mean, it's just like, it's always a matter of time and what else we're working on at the time. But like, you know, I've been wanting to do the Spirit thing for a while now, and it's just, you know, of course, like, you know, the pandemic and quarantine kind of put a hold on things, and it would have, you know, it would have been nice to do it like on its proper kind of like 20th anniversary or whatever, but you know, things just get delayed and go by the wayside. And after a while, it's just like, it doesn't matter to us, you know, we'll just kind of put it out whenever, and like things don't have to be like perfectly timed or, you know.
Well, people seem thrilled.
But we definitely have a lot of stuff, and other, you know, obviously a lot more anniversaries that will keep coming because we have a lot of records that we, you know, so yeah, I think we will
sweet.
Be able to do some other cool stuff.
Yeah. I mean, congrats on the reissue.
Thanks.
And on Sevens, and yeah, we've been super digging that record. We're both going to the show tonight. Very excited. Yeah, I feel like, you know, what a great time to be a Animal Collective fan. There's like, you're doing records, Panda Bear's doing records. You guys are, 2 decades in and still doing band records. Like,
yeah, I mean,
there's lots going on.
That's what we do at this point,
Yeah.
So it's like even when I think in my mind, like, oh, it'd be good to take a break or to stop, it's just sort of like, but then I have this other idea that I want to work on, or we got to go back to that and let's work on that now.
Well, yeah, I was wondering about like how you feel creatively now. Like when you wake up in the morning, like what are there specific like sounds or textures or gear at this moment that's really kind of intriguing you? Or
yeah, I mean, right now I feel like I've been in the tour mode. You know what I mean, and just using some sequencers, a lot of electron stuff to help me get through the set, or to put this set together. And then when I start doing that, then I'm always inclined to like work on new stuff, and just be like, oh, I could put this new little jam. I kind of have held back on this tour just because I wanted the set to be strong, and I was definitely like working on some other new stuff too. I have one new song in the set, and I'm not really sure. I'm in a place right now where I feel like I don't want to. I have ideas for like new records and that kind of thing, but I'm also like wanting things to just kind of like build organically on their own and come to me, and not like I feel like I've been jumping so quickly into one record from another for the past like 3 years or so that I'm looking forward to a time of just sort of like experimentation a little bit, and like really finding a new place beyond where I've been or something like that. I don't know.
Nice. Did Noah turn you on to like electron workflow, or had you been doing?
No, I got the mono machine kind of like when I was working on my record Down There, my first solo record, and nice. I just like read a few things about it. I read that Timbaland had used it. I think I stumbled upon a used version of it, and just immediately, it was a good price, and I immediately bought it and just fell in love with it. It's so organic. The workflow was really easy with it, and easy to dive into, and it's not like one of these machines where it's like there's tons of different banks you have to get into to get to that, to change things around. I feel like it's very user friendly, so
yeah,
I liked it in that sense and used it for Down There. And then I heard about the Octatrack coming out, and I got that so I could go on tour for Down There and put my tour together, and it worked. It's very complicated. It was very complicated, and I found it well. And that was around the same time I feel like Noah started using it too, the Octatrack. And of course he's like used it like, far more extensively than I have. I sort of backed away from it a little bit just because I felt like I didn't really need to. It wasn't, kind of important for what I was doing at the time. Or I was also focusing a lot more on Animal Collective, I guess, at that time, and that was like our Centipede Hertz era, and it was much more like band focused. So it was kind of like I'm not going to be using, like, I used it a little bit, and then I went back to it for Painting With and used it a little bit more for that, but like not only for like in a very simplistic way.
Yeah.
And now I got the Digitakt, which is like a simpler version of the Octatrack, basically, and just much better for my live workflow.
Sweet. Speaking of live shows, did you and Noah play shows before dance?
Did you guys ever tour for Spirit at all? Or
No. We played one show as Campfire Songs, which was the record we put out. Yeah, we started in that same era of me having that apartment. Brian, Noah, and I just started doing these improv jams, with acoustic guitars mostly and small percussive instruments. And we had a DX27 that we'd put through our stereo that was in the room, and just kind of like to create atmospherics and stuff like that, and just mess around with it and, create like background textures that we could do while we were playing live. And it was really just working on playing live together, and like trying to figure out like how we could play live, I guess. And at that time, we had friends that were playing shows around New York, and they asked us to, if we would open up. They knew we were playing. I think Spirit was out at that point. So they asked if we'd do a show. We weren't really doing much live, but we decided to do this one Campfire Song show. So that's like, that was just Noah and I playing acoustic guitars and kind of doing what would kind of, I guess, become sung tones.
Love those songs. Those are great.
Well, maybe we can talk about the EP a little bit. A Night at Mr. Raindrop's Holistic Supermarket. What a cool little like time capsule to include with the reissue.
Yeah, I mean, I can be pretty precious about, in the past I've been pretty precious about stuff like that, and been kind of like, that's not that's kind of off limits to, you know, for so long. That was like stuff that was only for like Animal Collective ears only, maybe a couple other like close friends that I would ever want to play stuff for, but like those guys were my main audience for so long, and I'd just be like, I did this, listen to this, or check out this, and then never play it for anybody else and just kind of put it in the archive. And so essentially those to me are like demos in a way, you know, and obviously not something I ever thought I would release. Once I kind of moved on to Spirit, I was like, all right, those were kind of just like me finding my way to like what I wanted this sound to be. But now I'm kind of like, it's cool to like.
Yeah, well, thanks for including it. I mean, it's really cool hearing the, you know, alt La Repette version. Is that like a pre-band?
Yeah, that, like I said, that was more of like a demo, just to be like, how will this song sound? How do I want this song to sound? Like, you know. And I, just played it for Josh, really, at the time. And probably Josh, Noah, and Brian, I don't know.
I love the Demented cover of Dreams.
Demented, right?
in the best way possible.
No, I mean, everybody's got their own perspective, you know. To me, it's just kind of like, it was a song I liked, you know what I mean? Song that I grew up, you know, with my mom and my older siblings just being really into 70s kind of light rock and Wings and Fleetwood Mac. So that kind of stuff was a big part of my upbringing and getting into music. So
totally
song I just liked a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, I grew up in a household that was heavy into Fleetwood Mac, and then I got like really deep into like Lindsey Buckingham, and I mean I feel like your music kind of reminds me of him.
Cool.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean like definitely over the years. Got more and more into his solo stuff. And,
he's got some weird stuff.
And just like there's just good songs on every Fleetwood Mac record, I think. You know,
totally.
What I mean?
Yeah. And then the bus tracks you mentioned. You said you were riding the bus back from Baltimore to New York, and is that where you made those, or that was kind of inspired by those trips?
It's just sort of like that. Yeah, it's just sort of like, you know, maybe mimicking what was going on in my head at that time. Just this sort of like. I feel like there are a lot of location recordings in there, like me, like in grocery stores, and just like sampling myself talking and that kind of thing, and just collaging, and that was
And what would you use at that time for that? Like a
either a mini disc or probably like we used a mini disc with these little microphones that we had. I think Brian and I both had them. I think we all might have had one. I think I probably used a cassette recorder too, just like a little dictaphone kind of thing.
Very cool.
Do you guys ever feel like you don't get enough credit for your lyrics, or because you just kind of create this like wall of sound sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. And I think more and more now people are kind of like starting to talk about it. Maybe because I've started saying that I feel like we never really get credit. I don't know. Or I feel like I've said it lately maybe, but I think, you know, it's certain points, like even like going back to Spirit, like I would not maybe have not had said at the time or for years after that the lyrics were very important to me, you know, or I mean, it all has like deep meaning, but I mean, or not important to me. They're important to me, but maybe important to the listening experience. I feel like I've always wanted to just like, you know, invoke imagery and kind of like it be more of this kind of like visceral experience for people that, you know, you can sort of give or take the lyrics, you know, let them do something for you or not, you know, like focus on something else. And I think it's probably because, so often there's so much going on in an Animal Collective song. It's kind of like maybe you don't think about the lyrics or maybe you don't pay attention to them. And certainly for our early stuff, they were pretty buried in the mix often. So it wasn't even really that important to me that you catch every lyric, because a lot of the music that I was inspired by, at least in terms of like songwriting, like I couldn't understand, like something like Pavement or something, like I couldn't always understand all the lyrics, and I kind of liked that, you know?
Yeah, it's like a second layer. It's like there if you want to go digging for it.
Yeah, and it's like kind of becomes like work too, you know what I mean? Like kind of like it's this other side of like the listening experience. It's like, oh, now I'm gonna like focus on the lyrics, you know, and try and figure out what that's all about and what are they saying, you know? And that was a side of it that was totally different than just like getting, you know, being affected by this music and the song.
Yeah. Does it still, I mean, for a lot of singers and songwriters, lyrics, you know, sort of the melodic shape comes first, and then, you know, they kind of find words. How are lyrics coming into the...
I feel like the song structure and the melody always comes first for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's just always certain words that are like a word that fits for me, that works in the rhythm or the way I want to deliver a song, or like immediately will pop into my head as like that's the phrase that should be there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a phrase that might not make much sense, you know what I mean? But like that, sometimes that matters to me, and sometimes that doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like it's more about the power of the delivery and like the melody and like what's said and how it's delivered to me than like what is actually being said. And then other times it is very important to me. So I kind of like, I go back and forth.
Yeah.
You know?
If we're talking about Spirit, it feels like so many of those songs are these stories, epic tales, like April and the Phantom, or, you know, these things that it feels like they have such like rich backstory. And
what I really liked and still like, but especially at the time, like just, you know, like short stories and fiction and horror fiction and sci-fi and fantasy and folklore, Grimm's fairy tales, like all that kind of stuff just influenced me a lot. I just, I kind of wanted it to all be like very fairy tale-esque, you know? So that's where that was going. But then have it sort of tie into my life and how I felt about being the age that I was. And I feel like Chocolate Girl, for example, has a lot to do with like a family lineage of like my mom and my sister and my mom's mom, and just sort of like getting older and having a daughter, and like that kind of thing, and just then create like this sort of fantasy kind of situation out of it that's not really my family, but something else.
Sweet. That's so cool. For the instrumentation, I know there's, you know, feedback, mini disc and stuff, but you're playing guitar and then keys and stuff. There's one kind of like high keyboard in a lot of the songs. I think of like the beginning of Chocolate Girl, like the little hook.
Most of it's the Roland Juno 60.
Oh, sweet.
Which is probably my favorite keyboard of all time.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I still have the one that I used on that, and I've toured with it on Animal Collective. I toured with it on the Merriweather tour for a while until it broke. And then I just realized how hard it would be to get something like that repaired on tour. I think we were in Israel, actually.
Oh, man.
And it was just kind of like, forget about it. So after that, I was like, all right, I'm never taking that on tour again. And I'll just like figure out a different way to make those sounds if I ever need to. But I still use it, you know, and I still have a good time like coming up with new sounds for it. And for some reason, I just always go back to that. I try and not use it as much anymore, just because I feel like I've used it so much. But yeah, most of that is the Juno 60.
That's cool. When did you get that 60?
I got it in 98, I believe it was. I got it like shortly after I moved to New York, because I felt there was a synth store there that had all these old synths that I just kind of walked into the store and I was like, what? Whoa, this is nothing like this in Maryland, you know?
Sweet. Yeah.
Because we, like when we were kids, or when we were in high school, Brian and this, our friend Brendan Fowler, who was like a drummer that we played with at the time back then, they both independently like fell into having, Brendan got a Moog Prodigy, just from a camp he went to, or no, at his old school, they just had one in the closet. And he was like, can I have that by any chance? If it's just sitting in a closet? And they were like, sure, take it. So we just have this original like Moog Prodigy, you know, keyboard that we used for like a lot of early, just our high school band, basically.
That's awesome. And such a sweet spot of like, post 80s, like late 90s, probably no one really cared about that
and then
stuff.
Brian went to a summer camp in a similar situation, realized in the closet there they had a Roland SH1.
Wow.
Yeah, which that keyboard we ended up using a lot more, just because Brian, you know, stayed in Animal Collective, so we used that a lot on Dance Manatee, like a lot of the filters on the vocals and stuff like that, and like the little keyboards on that are all,
because it has like the audio in, right? You can use the filters on it.
So
Sweet.
We got really into like doing stuff live with that, and that kind of like was a big part of the sound of Dance Manatee and Here Comes the Indian, or Arc now that it's called.
Arc, yeah.
I'm going to ask kind of a bummer question, but there's been a lot of talk about AI these days. I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah, I see it coming around.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, we're kind of at the point of no return, which is pretty depressing. But I guess kind of the contrarian's take would be, you know, maybe one day we're going to look at this and it's going to be like looking at the advent of the guitar amp or a sampler, and it's just going to become a part of like everyday life. Is there any way that AI in music can be subverted and used in like an interesting or creative way? I mean, what do you think about that? Is it possible? Have you guys thought about this?
I mean, In a sense, to me, like, it's not really that different than, say, the creation of like the guitar. You know what I mean? In a way, it's just sort of like, if put into the right hands, I feel like something amazing could happen. I feel like in a way, it's cool to think about like a music program or a platform that just is tapped into somebody's head. That's just sort of like, what kind of song do you want to create? I feel like the trouble with it is most people, and this is just naturally like how I feel like most people are. It's not like a slam on anybody, but I feel like most people would be like, well, I want to hear Oasis songs. You know what I mean? And so AI is going to create Oasis songs. But if there was a way to like, which I feel like is like the important thing about imagination, is just sort of like developing your own kind of like, what is the kind of music that anybody, that any individual would make that would be like their own kind of music. I feel like it would be cool if AI, could be used in that way to tap into somebody's brain to be like, this is my music, you know what I mean? And then just create that. But I feel like the negative side is like most of the time it's going to be like,
cheap copies.
Right.
Yeah,
like here's a Drake song. Like,
yeah. And I'm not knocking Oasis either.
Right. Fine
totally. Band, but just, I said Oasis just because like somebody played me like an AI, like Oasis record.
How did it sound?
Oh, really?
I mean, to me, like the way I put it was, it sounded like when, like, if you're in a practice space, like practicing next to like a really bad Oasis cover band. Yeah. And that's the filter that you're getting there.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you guys asked the AI to do a cover of My Girls in the vein of Dance Manity, and then you guys sampled that or something. I don't know. Like, you could
right. I think. Yeah, it could be. I think it was Brian Eno maybe that said like the technology of today that everybody slams is also like the technology that everybody goes back to and covets, like CD, like digital skipping and stuff. Like everybody's into that now, and it's always like there's stuff that comes out that everybody thinks is so negative, but then people will go back to it and be like, the faults in that, or that's what makes it amazing.
And if you want to get like kind of, real trippy, AI is a human creation, so.
Yeah.
I guess a small human aspect to it. But
Brian Eno was pretty critical of NFTs, I think. I wonder if he'll come back around.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is missing in music, or what's something you really like in music these days?
What I always feel like starts to be missing in music is just sort of like the faults and sort of like, like the happy accidents. And when things just start to become too perfect, you know what I mean? It just starts to get boring to me. And I feel like what I feel like we were trying to do with like stuff like Dance Manity or Here Comes the Indian or Arc, sorry, it's hard to not call it that because it's ingrained in my mind. But it was just sort of, break things apart, you know what I mean? And the structures, I just, I value new structures, and I feel like I feel like I get bored when I start to hear the same 4/4 tempos and guitar, indie rock kind of thing. It's fine. People like enjoy that kind of music, and that's fine. And I feel like people should have a good time. And I don't want to knock anybody for playing music, you know what I mean? 'Cause I think it's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, it's like, I'm interested more in things getting broken apart in different structures and just becoming non-music almost. I don't know.
Well, I feel like Spirit, sets forth that aim clearly and accomplishes it. I'm curious. I feel like you seem like you've had a very similar outlook all along when it comes to art making and music making, but I wonder if the Dave of 1999 and 2000 about to release this first album of yours, first proper album, like were you as stoked then? Was there any like fear about releasing music, especially something so experimental? Was there any...
we just wanted anybody who would listen to listen. That was like, that was all we wanted from high school, from when we started, our first bands to I felt like we always kind of believed in what we were doing, in our little group, but we understood too. We were just a little group, and we were quickly, disheartened, like sending music out and just getting responses back. They were just kind of like, yeah, it's okay, or like, you should listen to other stuff that's out there, you know what I mean? Just like no interest but we also got a lot of really good advice back that time, and it was really helpful from musicians that we really respected, and it just kept us going. And I think, I feel lucky in that we just sort of developed a group of peers and friends that kind of believed in us and like showed interest in what we were doing, and it started small for us, and it never really like, took off. And I never really, I just was taking it step by step. I never thought I would, it's not that I didn't think things would happen, but I just never thought like, oh, I'm going to be able to live off this, or it was always just, goal achieved if like another person was like, or another record store would buy a few copies of the record and put it up for sale. It just was like another step in a positive direction for me.
We got to ask, is there anything you could say about future Animal Collective music?
I mean, I don't, it's always a tough thing with this stuff, just because of like how labels like to put out music these days. Or at least our label.
You could be cryptic.
I mean, we have a record finished, and it will come out this year, hopefully.
Hell yeah.
And we are trying, hopefully, to put at least a song from the record in the next couple months. Yeah.
Exciting. Nice.
Well, Dave, thanks so much, man, for taking the time, and congrats on the new record. We could have had a whole other interview about Sevens and your solo stuff, but we thought for today we could focus on Spirit.
No, totally, it's cool. I haven't really done any press on the reissue, so
right on.
Yeah,
so it's cool.
Yeah,
I guess I'll just say one of the cool things about art is it'll make you want to make art and create, and I feel like listening to your music makes me want to make art. So thank you,
thanks.
man.
I like your Baltimore Royals hat.
Thanks. They're like really good this year.
Oh, are they?
Everyone's like under 30 and like looks like they're from the 80s.
Do you know Horse Lord's Baltimore band?
Yeah.
That's it for this week, guys. Thanks again for listening. Special thanks to Colin Davis, the folks at Stone's Throw, and Kenny Becker for helping us out with this episode. We're having a bunch of fun doing this. If you are digging it, tell a friend, won't you? Or, throw us a rating, throw us a review. Hit us up on the Instagram, Bonefish Pod. Thanks, guys. Until next time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to knock your Dreams cover as demented.
I'm used to it, believe me.
That was a
I've been making demented music for years.
That's a compliment.
No, for me it's a compliment.
Hell yeah, dude.
Bonefish.